Hello and welcome to the Gaggle What We Challenge, and if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely, and I just want to record a short video about an interesting event that took place during Vladimir Putin's end of the year news conference that we have already covered quite extensively here at the Gaggle. And this little event has given rise to a bit of a controversy, namely the accusation that Vladimir Putin is anti-Semitic. Now, of course, it's a familiar trope, and you always use that against anyone that you don't like, irrespective of whether there's any evidence for it or not. So it's come up before. Accusations of Putin's anti-Semitic, Lavrov's anti-Semitic, Russia is anti-Semitic. And of course, it's quite ridiculous, particularly when we think about Putin's life and career, because Putin is, if anything, very philo-Semitic. He's spoken often about his personal relations with Jews when he was growing up in Leningrad. We remember how he visited the Yad Vashem Center in Israel, and he's very much spoken about the close bonds between Russia and Israel, and that essentially almost that Israel is an extension of Russia, and so it's always been a strange accusation, and particularly ever since October the 7th, 2023, Putin has been rather quiet on the issue. Yeah, he's hardly been in the forefront of the countries condemning Israel, to say the least. But anyway, anti-Semitism is obviously always a useful tool with which to bash over the head any political figure that you don't like. And so what happened during that news conference was that somebody asked him about how the Ukrainians have been dealing with the Orthodox Church in Ukraine. And here is the exchange. So I'll show you the transcript, and you can judge for yourself. So here's the question. It says, or in one more important aspect, in Ukraine now, there are not just attacks on the Russian Orthodox Church, but it is practically expelled. How do you feel about the fact, and do you think that the positions of the ROC, which is the Russian Orthodox Church, have been undermined? And of course, we know that the government in Kiev has been waging a campaign against the Russian Orthodox Church of Ukraine, and again, the media have been clapping their hands with glee and say, "Oh yeah, that's just it's an agency of the Kremlin. It's just a political tool, and so that's fine. Even though, hey, you're closing down churches, you're seizing the property of churches. That's not in accord with liberal values. But it's always." You get free hand when you're dealing with the Russians. Apparently, values can be suspended just as long as you're bashing Russians. So the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, which is obviously connected with the Orthodox Church of Russia, that has been seriously under attack now for quite some time. And here, Putin says, what is happening with the Russian Orthodox Church is a unique thing. After all, this is a gross, flagrant violation of human rights, the rights of believers. The church is being torn apart before the eyes of the entire world. It's like a firing squad. and everyone in the entire world prefers not to notice it. And again, remember the EU has even sanctioned Patriarch Kirill, even though he's a religious leader, and you can't just pick and choose, which religious leaders you like or you don't like. I mean, you basically, when it comes to politicians, it's hands off against religious leaders. But nonetheless, the EU has sought to sanction him, and the only person there among the EU leaders who says, well, we can't sanction Patriarch Kirill because he is a religious leader, is Viktor Orban. He says we just basically have to leave religion alone. But here, Ukrainians obviously have not been leaving religion alone. They've been waging this explicitly political campaign against the Orthodox Church. And again, all the EU and NATO worthies have been clapping their hands with delight. Anyway, I think that those who do this will come back to haunt them. You said they are tearing things apart. Yes, that is what's happening. You see, the thing is, these people are not even atheists. Atheists are also people who believe in something. They believe that there's no God, but this is their faith, their conviction. Okay? But these are not atheists. These are people without any faith at all, atheists. They are ethnic Jews, but who has seen them in a synagogue? In my opinion, no one has seen them in the synagogue. They are not Orthodox either because they do not go to churches. They are certainly not followers of Islam because they are unlikely to appear in a mosque either. So it's clearly saying they are irreligious. They're hostile to religion, but they're not actually atheists because an atheist would at least have a faith, some kind of a faith, of the faith that the material existence is all there is. There's no transcendental existence. There's just our material existence, and it is a matter of faith. I mean, to say that there is no God, it is a matter of faith to make that assertion. Anybody says, well, okay, but you can't call them just Jews because you don't see them in the synagogue. And then he says, well, they're not followers of Islam because you don't see them in the mosque either. And then he says, these are people without a clan, without a tribe. They don't care about anything that is dear to us and the overwhelming majority of the Ukrainian people. They will run away someday and will go to the beach instead of a church, but that's their choice. I think that someday they will remember this, and people in Ukraine and the overwhelming majority of Ukrainian residents are still related to Orthodoxy will evaluate them. Now, what happened here is, of course, the Israel lobby or the Zionist lobby pounced on his words and naturally taking them out of context, willfully misinterpreting what he said, and suggested that, of course, he was being anti-Semitic. Because, of course, he said, he mentioned that there were Jews, but he said, well, they're not really Jews, because you never see them in the synagogue. And here's the Times of Israel says, this is the headline, reviving anti-Semitic trope. It's always the anti-Semitic trope. Then, which means anytime you say anything that basically Jews don't like to hear, or not Jews, but those who purport to speak on behalf of Jews, and obviously the Israel lobby, which purports to speak on behalf of all Jews, says, you're blaming the Jews, you're singling out the Jews, you're reviving ancient tropes, engendering hostility towards Jews. Anyway, reviving anti-Semitic trope, Putin says Jews are tearing apart the Russian Orthodox Church. We just looked at that. It's not what he said. He said these are people who have no religion. They are irreligious. Then he says Russian President Vladimir Putin used anti-Semitic rhetoric during his lengthy end of the year press conference, accusing people, including ethnic Jews, of tearing apart the Russian Orthodox Church. again, that's not what he said. He said that he said, these people, and again, he's only talking about of them all, the Ukrainian leaders. They're not all Jews. Zelensky is the president, but he's saying he doesn't have any religion. He has no religious affiliation, but he's not the only one who has been attacking the Russian Orthodox Church. But there, you see, the Times of Israel says, oh, well, he's saying it's the Jews tearing apart the Russian Orthodox Church. It says, during the press conference, Putin was asked about punitive measures some European countries have taken against the Russian Orthodox Church in the wake of the 2022 invasion of Ukraine over the church's close relationship with Putin's regime. The Council of Europe recently labeled the church a propaganda tool of the Kremlin, and several European countries have expelled church officials due to security concerns. Now, you notice what happens here. That here is the Times of Israel, which declares that that this is entirely fine. The Council of Europe labels the church a propaganda tool of the Kremlin. Now, this obviously is an outrage because, hey, it's still, whether you like it or not, and the Council of Europe basically, by and large, it's not an adherent of the Orthodox Church. It lashes out against a religious affiliation that it doesn't share, and it says a propaganda tool of the Kremlin. And several European countries have expelled church officials due to security concerns. Security concerns, of course, no one knows exactly what that means. But again, you have politicians who are attacking a church. They're attacking church leaders, church officials, which is, you're not really supposed to do that. Again, if you care so much about values, that's not what you're supposed to do. When you use values, you leave religion alone. It's not your affiliation. It's not your faith or whatever. You leave it alone. Let people follow whatever religious teaching they prefer. But that isn't the view of the Council of Europe. But again, if this were, say, Islam, they would take a very different view. They would suddenly say this is outrageous to make any kind of attacks on Islam because that's a violation of our values. We can't attack people's religious faith. But it's permissible in today's Europe to attack the Russian Orthodox Church. That's fine. There's no problem about that. No one's suddenly saying, oh, you're violating values. But if you were to started attacking a variety of imams, boy, there would be absolute hell to pay, in contemporary Europe. Hey, this is anti-Islamic bigotry. This is Islamophobia. And that's not in accord with our values. But bashing the Russian Orthodox Church, that apparently is in accord with our values. And then says, they're quoting Putin, these people that are attacking the church, they are not atheists. They're absolutely faithless people. This is their translation. Godless people. Well, ethnically, many of them are Jews, but you haven't seen them visit any synagogue. Yes. So, and then, again, it's their translation, not exactly the Kremlin's translation. And then, after adding that the alleged opponents of the church were also neither Orthodox Christian, I love the alleged opponents of the church. They're alleged. They're closing down churches. They're seizing church property, but they're alleged opponents. And indeed, the Times of Israel says openly, they're being, banned from European country, but it's still alleged. He added, these are people without kin or memory, with no roots. They don't cherish what we cherish, and the majority of the Ukrainian people cherish as well. Critics of Putin decried the statements as anti-Semitic, noting parallels to Soviet state anti-Semitism under Joseph Stalin, when the Kremlin persecuted Jews and accused them of being rootless cosmopolitans. Now, this is an old trope that Stalin, when he talked about rootless cosmopolitans, was referring to Jews. It's never been established that that's what he meant, but that it's always been alleged that Stalin was sort of very anti-Semitic and accused Jews of rootless cosmopolitans. But let's go back again. Let's look at those words of Putin's again. And here we have, let's go back. He says that to go back, yeah. So here, that's the way it says, I think that those who do this will come back to haunt them. You said they are tearing things apart. Yes, that is what's happening. You see, the thing is, these people are not even atheists. Atheists are people who believe in something. They believe that there's no God. And then it says, but these are not atheists. These are people without any faith at all. They are ethnic Jews, but who has seen them in the synagogue? In my opinion, no one has seen them in the synagogue. They are not Orthodox either because they do not go to churches. They are certainly not followers of Islam because they are unlikely to appear in a mosque either. And then these are people without a clan, without a tribe. They don't care about anything that is dear to us and the overwhelming majority of the Ukrainian people. They will run away someday and will go to the beach instead of a church, but that's their choice. Now, clearly he is saying that these are people who have no respect for any kind of religion. And so they have no for people's religious faith. That's his point. And yeah, I mean, if you look at Zelensky, has there been any time throughout his career, as a comedian, as an entertainer, someone who played the piano with his sexual organ, any time that he has shown any sort of understanding, appreciation of the religious faith? No, there isn't. So there's nothing that Putin said that is anything outrageous or anything that is untrue. So what's happening here is an issue is being created with saying that he's attacking the Jews and that Stalin did that and Stalin and anti-Semitism, when that's clearly not what Putin was saying. He was answering a specific question about the Ukrainian persecution of the Russian Orthodox Church, which again the Times of Israel approves of, because they don't like the Russian Orthodox Church. So that's fine. You want to close down a Russian Orthodox Church? That's okay by me. And then here, Rabbi Pinchas Goldschmidt, the president of the Conference of European Rabbis, warned that Putin's characterization of Jews in this way could have dangerous consequences. And this is just one example of the regime's explicit and virulent anti-Semitism, which is, example. What other examples are there? Indeed, what examples at all do you have of the regime's explicit and virulent anti-Semitism, which has intensified following his 2022 invasion of Ukraine and the 2023 events of October the 7th, which is very strange, bringing up October the 7th, when, as I said, Russia has been really quite quiet about it all, very much maintaining a low profile. This is all reminiscent of Stalin's fight against cosmopolitanism and the Doctor's Plot of 1948 to 53. I don't know what is the Doctor's Plot. I mean, 1948. There was no doctor's plot in 1948. I mean, if he is talking about the doctor's plot, that goes just, it was 1952. There was nothing in 1948. But anyway, the brutal anti-Semitic campaign in the Soviet Union. There was no brutal anti-Semitic campaign. In fact, there was no anti-Semitic campaign in the Soviet Union, resulting in the arrest and killing of much of the Soviet Jewish leadership in the Soviet Union. Again, vastly overstated. But then the issue somehow that the Soviet Union was anti-Semitic is just simply, again, untrue, but has been what was very much used in the West to turn kind of Jewish opinion against the Soviet Union, because up until up until late on into the 50s, 60s, and 70s, Jews in the West had looked upon the Soviet Union quite favorably. But once they somehow put out this legend that somehow the Soviet Union was very anti-Semitic, then that helped turn Jewish opinion against the Soviet Union. So he comes along and makes this claim. And then here, as a representative of Jewish communities across Europe and someone who was forced to flee my home and community in Moscow, I call on Europe and the free world to unequivocally condemn President Putin's dangerous propaganda before it spreads further. What propaganda? I just read this out. Where's the propaganda? Said Goldschmidt, who in 2022 left Russia and quit as chief rabbi of Moscow due to his refusal to endorse the invasion. But nothing was happened to him. No one persecuted him. No one made life difficult for him. He chose to leave Russia. And then we have a tweet, which you can bet who's behind this. The American Jewish Committee sends this out. This classic anti-Semitism. So we've now moved on to the classic anti-Semitism from Russian President Vladimir Putin is deplorable. Blaming Jews for society's problems. Did he do that? He just said they're not really Jews. You don't even see them in a synagogue. They don't have any religious faith. They're not even atheists. So he's not even saying that they're Jews, and so therefore this is they're doing this as Jews. That this is part of some kind of Jewish plot, Jewish conspiracy. That's exactly what he's not saying. Blaming Jews for society's problems is not only wrong, but also incredibly dangerous. So it's very, very dangerous. Throughout history, this type of rhetoric has led to extreme violence and persecution against Jewish communities, especially in Russia. So out comes all the familiar tropes about Russia and the pogroms, the Holocaust, and all because of a remark in a news conference, which was actually correct. It was an accurate characterization of the people who were persecuting the Russian Orthodox Church in Ukraine. And notice how neither the Times of Israel nor the American Jewish Committee say anything about that. That doesn't worry them, that you're shutting down churches. That's fine. You're persecuting clerics, fine, no problem there. But the pogroms, Holocaust, you're blaming Jews for society's ills, that addresses the issue. So there's something very, very dishonest and rather disgusting about this kind of shameless exploitation of issues pertaining to Jews and anti-Semitism and Israel. Of course, there's nothing new about that. But every time it's done, the arguments are so flimsy, and the evidentiary basis is so absurd that's, it's really, laughable, revolting, choose your own adjective. But I think that, one really should always be aware of when these things are done, because they have these kinds of accusations have a momentum of their own. You put it out there claiming, oh, he's anti-Semitic, and then the New York Times picks it up and says, oh, there have been many accusations leveled at Putin that he was anti-Semitic. Oh, and then it's now, widely seen, widely believed that Putin is anti-Semitic. So by dint of repetition, they acquire sort of reality of their own. So it's always, every time this is done, it's always worth pointing this out. Anyway, I just wanted to make this short video. So thank you very much. And remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye-bye.